Right, good afternoon, everybody. Hope we are doing well. I can see we have a few people in already, which is great. I'll just give it a few more minutes just to see if anybody else wants to join. Um, Welcome to Extract Data. We're going to be doing a little bit of web scraping and stuff today. Specifically, I'm going to be looking at a bit of browsers and a bit of browser fingerprinting. I think this is a really interesting subject. So I've got a couple of things I want to show you, and then obviously I'm going to show you how we handle browser HTML and actions in Xi API, which I think is a pretty awesome way of doing things. So I'll get to some code and I'll show you some examples as well. So hopefully you guys will enjoy that. I'm just going to give it a couple more minutes to see if anybody else wants to come in, and we'll get started. Right. Oh, a bit laggy. There we go. Perfect. Right. So I'm going to share my screen now when I get my OBS back. There we go. Perfect. Right. So what I've got on my screen at the moment is probably, I've got my chat over here, which is why I'm going to look at this way a lot. I'm on my own today. My colleagues are away on vacation, so it's just me. What I've got here is pretty standard Playwright example, right? So we're all familiar with using browsers when we're web scraping. We need to use something that's going to render the page for us. Maybe it's like heavy JavaScript, or maybe there's a JavaScript test that you have to pass and you need a browser for that. Now, in a lot of cases, you might get away with using a TLS enabled or improved HTTP client. And the one I use a lot in Python is called curl CFFI, along with a few others. They work really well in certain cases, but in others, you do need a browser. If you could just let me know that you can hear me all right in the chat. I'm getting a couple of little errors, but it seems to suggest that it's fine. So yeah, just confirmation would be great, please. I did this earlier and I had no issues. All good. Perfect. Thank you. Right. So we're looking at basic scripts. So these websites, if you're not familiar with them, they are like browser testing websites, and it gives you a good idea of what your browser fingerprint looks like. So what is your browser fingerprint? So whenever you connect to a website, your browser can hand over or can be queried for a certain amount of information. And I say a certain amount of information because it's a lot of information. There's lots of JavaScript APIs that can be run by the website that you're connecting to, and they can give away a lot of information about who you are, what your browser is, your computer type, your operating system type. Now, some of this information we can volunteer, like that's kind of what your user agent is, but it's only a certain amount, right? So a lot of information can be gathered. This information is then used to create a fingerprint, and that fingerprint is then kind of like assigned to you. Now, having a unique fingerprint, I see that mentioned quite a lot, is not necessarily a bad thing or a good thing. It kind of just depends, really. But what these websites will do is they will tell you whether your fingerprint, whether your connection to this service looks like a bot or not. So I've run these already, and if we look at the screenshots that came back, you'll have to ignore the consent thing because it's just living in the EU, I'm afraid. We can see we've got the red over here for WebDriver, and if I went to the other one, bot detected. This is bog standard Playwright. Now, bog standard Playwright, a lot of people recognize this, recommend this rather, when it comes to web scraping because, you need to use a browser, try Playwright. In most cases, you're going to struggle because it's just going to get detected straight away. There's some real key, obvious flags that give it away. The first one is, there's some really I think it's called like a driver enabled or something like that, which basically, one thing to check for with a quick line of JavaScript and you're instantly blocked. Now, this is all very well and good, but, there are other options, and most people that have done this a lot know about these other options. There's quite a few. There's some really good open source browsers that kind of circumvent a lot of this, and one of them is called NoDriver. Again, this is designed to beat those sorts of protections. And if I show you the screenshot that I got by running NoDriver, here you can see this became back normal and human detected. I think you can probably just about see that there. So why would you want to do any? If this works, why do anything else? Well, the problem is that when you're running your own browsers like this, you have to manage them. You have to manage a lot of things because browsers are not only resource heavy, they are data heavy, they are prone to crashing and having issues, and the infrastructure to keep them alive is quite challenging, especially at scale. Now, if you just want to automate one thing on one website once or twice a day, it's not a massive deal. But you're still going to have the problems, and I had this. I used to use, the one that I use a lot, which I didn't show here, is called CamoFox, and it's a really great library. But the problem is that you're then constrained to managing that browser yourself. And I found that after a while of running it on my server, I just had issues where, I had to build in things like restarting it often. I had to kill the browser more often. And then you start to build up this kind of like maintenance thing that you need to manage. And it's just an extra layer of complexity and issues in the way of getting the data that you want. So what we've done at Zeit is we have in our API, which you can just make one request to, the ability to toggle on whether you want that loaded through a browser or not. And it basically looks like this. So this is our one request here, right? Now, this is me putting the API key through my, I'll make this one step bigger. This is me putting the API key through my environment, right? So we all know you don't paste your API key directly into your code, and then you commit it to GitHub and you will have a bad time. So this is what I'm doing here. So you can ignore that really. Now, this is important because the response that we're going to get is, actually it's not for browser HTML. This was for my other example. I'll talk about that in a bit. This was our request here. So we need to make a post request, and this is all we need to do. Browser HTML is equal to true. And what this is going to do is this is going to tell the Zeit API that you want to run this URL, this request, through a browser. And it's going to do all that for you. And we're going to maintain all the infrastructure. We're going to manage all of the browsers. You're not going to have to worry about anything like that. It's just going to handle it, right? So that's going to take away all of that pain. Now, yes, there is a cost associated to this, but it's very small. In a lot of cases, you're just so much better off letting us handle it than trying to do it all yourself. Now with this, what you get back is the rendered HTML. Now, we all know that just having a browser is, that's fine, but we want to be able to do things with it because there's always times where you need to click on something, or you need to type something into a box, or you need to do something with it. And we can obviously handle all that as well. If we look at my example here, I commented these out in the end, but actually, this is me trying to find an element that matches this. So I'm basically trying to match elements on the page to be able to do something, to then click if I uncomment these, and then I had to sleep and all this stuff. So, it's just a bit of a pain really. So we have this here, and here's my base64 decode, because obviously when we send the response back, this is a screenshot response, right? So we need to be able to translate that across the API, so it's base64. Now, if I was to run this now, was it Pixel Scan or browser? We'll just try on this one first. If I run this, we're going to go ahead, make that request. It's going to go, and we're going to go, and I'm actually going to save the HTML as well. I don't need to do that, but we should get this screenshot back. And what this will show us is that we should pass this, the test that I showed you earlier, and there should be no issue. Now, when I'm running it the first time, it's going to take a little bit longer because the browser's got to spool up. But what you can do is when you're making subsequent requests, you make them asynchronously, which means they happen all kind of like at the same sort of time, and you can handle the data that way. Especially if you use the Zeit API either through Scrapy or through the Python client. And obviously now that the browser's loaded up and it's available there, we can be able to reuse it because we want to reuse the session. So if I look at it here, human detected, it's come back directly that way. So no problems in this respect. Now, one thing that I wanted to talk about before I move into actions is that if I want to be careful about what I say here, because let's say you want to use one of the open source packages to do your web scraping with your browser. And that's absolutely fine. And, I appreciate that. And I've done that a lot myself. But the problem is they are open source, which means any of the, big anti-bot companies that provide the WAF and all like that, they can see the source code. So they know exactly what's going on. And as soon as those libraries get to a certain size, maybe they start to get noticed a bit more. So they naturally need to stay a bit more underground. And what that kind of means is that to stay a bit more underground, they need to stay a bit smaller. You're relying on one maintainer quite often. And if things don't get updated, but, the anti-ban, the anti-bot companies, they update theirs, but your open source doesn't get updated, all of a sudden the script that you've been running for a month that was fine has now got problems and you need to resolve it. But of course, with us, we manage all of that. We handle all of it. We make sure it all works, and we make sure it works all the time. And if something goes wrong, or if a site stops working, it's on us to fix it, right? So we will sort it out. So now we've looked at this and we've got the screenshot back and I know that it's working. What I want to do is I want to talk a bit about the actions that you can do on our browser, and just to make sure we cover off all the use cases. So what I've got here is just kind of a blank file that I'm going to use to actually show you through it. But before that, I want to go to the documentation, because it's very important. Documentation is very important always, and I reference it all the time. So what I'm going to do is we'll just have a quick look here. I'll make this full screen, make this a bit bigger. So we have the browser automation. So as I showed, we can do screenshots and we can do rendered HTML, which are the two things that I've shown you already right now. Okay. There's also a load of other things we can do along actions, network capture, and all this other stuff. Right. Network capture, we've touched on briefly before, but it's another thing that I want to cover. It's really useful. But in this instance, I'm going to look at actions, because this, I think, is going to be the most important thing. We scroll down. So what we have is we need to enable browser is HTML is equal to true, which is what I showed you. Here's a screenshot. Options, right? Actions. So we've got a few examples for the most common actions that you're going to want to do. Probably scroll bottom is the most common one that you're going to find, because a lot of things you scroll to the bottom of the page to get everything to load up, right? We're all aware of this kind of way that some certain sites work. Now what this is going to show us here is that within our JSON body for our request, for our post request, we need to call actions, then we need to say action, and then we need to define it here. So in this case, this is just going to scroll to the bottom, and this is a test website that has a scroll in it. It's this simple, right? And we can chain these together, so you can have multiple instances. This is just, just JSON data, so we can add in more of these as we need to, and that's what I'm going to do in this case. I'm going to show you a few chained together. Now, there's a couple of caveats. The main one, which I think most people will probably come up against, is that there is a time limit on how many browser actions you can run. So it's a time limit of 60 seconds. So whatever has happened at that 60-second time limit, it will just come back to you in that state or form. So you just need to be aware. Now, for me, this has never been a problem, because you really don't want to spend a lot of time interacting with the browser in that regard, for my personal use cases anyway. So you just need to be aware of that. If you have some really long-winded interactions, it could be that you need to handle that externally yourself, which is something out. But we obviously can't facilitate endless actions. So that's the probably the most common one. There's some other ones down here, and this is where it talks about action limits and selectors. There's wait actions, which are fine. I'm not whatever. Here's some network capture we're going to cover back. But the other ones I want to look at are here. So I think I scroll up. Here we go. So these are all the actions that you can do. So the first one, click is very obvious. Double click, scroll to. Wait for navigation. This is a useful one. and wait for selector. I know I've used these a lot in the past before because you want to wait for something to load up specifically on a page before you do something. So it could be like whatever, maybe the page you're trying to extract the data from, it loads up part of it and then you have to wait for something else to come up. But if you're just running the browser as is, maybe it's returning too soon, so you can return the data for you once it finds that selector. Now there's a couple of more interesting ones in here. The first one is set location, and I believe there is a similar one as well, set search keyword. Now I tried this one. This one works really well on sites that it works on, right? And that's already sounds like a strange thing to say, but what I mean is that here's the kind of the caveat. So I tried this on this specific site that I'm looking at and it didn't work, but that's fine because it gave me a good option to show you how to do it the other way. Set location is a really good one as well. If we all know those sites where you kind of like things change depending on what kind of location you put into the site, and if it is accepting of this action, you can quickly and easily set location. So with these two, what I'd say, if that's important to you, is you just try this first and see if it works. And if it doesn't, and you're scraping at scale or you really need to, then you can do this and we can fix that in for you. It saves you so much time because it was going to automatically find the right field. It's going to set it to what you need to. But we're not going to look at those for the moment. We're going to look at click, which is a really important one. Scroll bottom is fine. I've shown you that one. We're also going to look at typing into a box and keep pressing. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to come back to my code and we're going to start here, and all I'm going to do is I'm going to add in this API response here, and this is going to be equal to our requests.post, and this is just me constructing the request again. And I deleted everything, so I just need to put in the API URL, which is api.site.com v1 extract. I think should know this by now. Put you in there. And I'm going to put in my auth, which is going to equal to my API key, and this is a tuple here, and then I'm going to add in the JSON data, which is where we're going to put everything in that we are interested in. So the first thing is obviously going to be the URL, which is the URL which I'm going to scrape the data from. I'm just going to use this one here, URL, and we'll go to here. Okay, so this is the URL of what we're going to do. Now I do want to add in put www actually to be more precise. We do want to add in the screenshot as well, because I want to show you what it looks like when it comes back, because obviously otherwise we won't see the browser because it's all going to happen on our servers. So I'm going to add in the screenshot. That's going to be true. Then we're going to add in browser HTML. So we're saying, hey, we want to load it up in a browser, please. True. And now we're going to do our actions. Now, as I showed you in the documentation, to do actions, we just call the key of actions like this, and then this is basically a list of dictionaries, or I guess a list of arrays, or however it's called in JSON. I'm a Python person, I would call this a list of dictionaries, and we can then start naming them. So the first action I want to do here is I want to do click. Now, it needs to be in there, like click. Now I'm telling the Site API, the browser, that I'm going to want to click on something, single click. So I need to give it a selector. I need to tell it where to click. So we'll do selector, and now I need to give it a selector of what I want to click on. Now a selector will have a type. It will accept XPath as well as CSS. I'm a CSS selector person. It was just what I learned first, so that's what I always tend to use. And then we need to give it a value. Now I've already got this here because I was messing around with this earlier, and I know that the value of the thing that I want to click on here is this. Now this is just the CSS selector for the button. That'll be whatever it'll be on the site that you are wanting to scrape the data from. The next action that we're going to want to do is we want to type something in. So effectively what I'm clicking on here is I'm clicking on just a button to bring something up on the page. But now we want to type into a search bar. So again, this is another action. You can see this is just us chaining them together, like pretty straightforward. And this action is called type. Excuse me. Now we need a selector again. So we want to have a selector that we want to type into. Straightforward, same as it was before. Is it what type is it? I know you could have XPath here if you wanted to. Again, I've got CSS selector, so that's what I'm going to do. And the value is going to be equal to it is this one. So it's an input because it needs to be an input an input field. I'm going to put in. And for some reason on this website, and I don't know why, the selector was this. That seemed to work well for me, so that's what I went with. And now we just need to give it some text of what we want to put in here. And this is just freeform text, and that's going to add it into this that field. That's it. Now, once we click on this, once we add the text in here, we want to actually commit this. We want to actually commit this field. There's obviously quite a few different ways that you can do this. You could either click on a button or whatever. I'm going to use the key press because key press is just another one I can show you, and it's a pretty cool way of doing it, pretty easy way of doing it. And again, very straightforward. You want action, tell the API what the action is. It's key press, and then what key do you want to press? And in my case, I want to hit enter. Now, if I come back to the documentation real quick, I save this over here. Under this section, we got all the keys that you can press and how to call them with your ID. So whatever you need to push, you can push it pretty much and you can get it done. So here's all the options that you've got. So regardless of how the website works for you, whatever you need to, buttons you need to push, it's all available. It's all in our documentation. So always check in there, which is definitely worthwhile. So what I've got now is I have a completed request to our API. I'm authenticating. And I've got my JSON here. Now, if you're using Scrapey, you could do exactly this as well. It just looks ever so slightly different because obviously this is just a standard request, which I'm doing because it's easier to demonstrate. But of course, this could be within Scrapey. The JSON payload would look the same and it will do exactly the same thing. What's going to happen is nothing is going to return from the browser until these actions are completed or one fails. And if one fails, we'll get, I think it's, I can't remember what the response is, but it will tell us and it will say, what went wrong. I'm probably going to get that because I've typed this out without actually kind of going through it as I do, which normally how I work. I would do, try this one, see what comes back, try this one, see what comes back. But we'll get there and we'll hopefully be fine and we'll fix any errors as we go. So what I'm going to do now is I just need to save the screenshot. And it's going to be bytes. Always try and use type hints in Python where you can. I'm notoriously bad for not. Again, we need to decode this, and this is our API response. .json. And I think it just comes in screenshot like this. This is me just pulling out the screenshot from the response. When we get this response back, there's like different keys. There's the URL key, which is the URL we requested, status code, browser HTML because we've requested the browser HTML, and then the screenshot because I asked for a screenshot up here. If I didn't do this, obviously this key wouldn't exist. And now I just need to save this, and we'll call this one actions screenshot .jpg, and we need to do write bytes, write screenshot. Right. Okay. Let's just have a quick check back through. That should be fine. That's probably the right URL. Going here, we want a screenshot, our actions. Okay, click on this selector, then type into this one with this text and then hit enter. Okay, let's see what we get back. Let's see if this works or if I've done something wrong. Again, this might take a little bit of time because okay, so I did do something wrong. Let's debug this then. Let's do print our API response and see what it is that I did wrong. We can fix it whilst we're here. Who saw that one? Who saw that one? This is one of these words that I just cannot seem to type. Browser HTML. Perfect. Well, that should work. Let's comment this out now so we don't get this all out again. Right. Let's see if it works now. Again, this is going to take a little while because not only we've got to load the browser up, it's got to click, type, etc., etc. That seemed to work, so let's come back over here, and we had an action screenshot, and there we go. So I know it's behind the cookies bar. Again, this is because EU laws, etc., etc. But you can see that I went to the main page, actions here, the main page that I started on. I clicked into this search box, and I searched results. You can see we have the search results up here. So that's kind of like a quick overview of the actions and what you're able to achieve. And like I said earlier, you can keep changing as much as you need to, up to 60-second activation time, right? And there's so many that you can do, and it's extremely powerful. I would highly recommend that if you use a browser a lot, that you get yourself an API key. You can get them. There'll be a link floating around somewhere. If not, I'll paste one. And you can sign up for free. You get free credit to try it, right? And you can see if it works for your use case. There's so many of these things that you can do. All the common ones that you'll need really. Scroll bottom being a particularly useful one, as I mentioned earlier. So this is kind of one of the things that we can do with the browsers. And again, this is twofold. Not only do we have all the actions available, but this is still just a API request. So you don't have to change anything here. You can just easily, seamlessly integrate this into your own code. It's just an API request, depending, and then changing the JSON body that we send over depends on how we're going to do it, right? So within this as well, you have all the other options that you can change, like you could do the geolocation as well. You could make it specific geolocation if you needed to. These are all things that you can do with the site API. I just really wanted to focus on this in this short video example that we have good fingerprints, which is a common problem I think a lot of people struggle with when they start trying to use browsers, and we also are able to do actions on this. One thing that I haven't touched on in this that is also very useful is the sessions. So within this, you can add in a property, and I'll cover this in an upcoming live stream, where you choose to have your own session. When you revisit it, you will have exactly the same browser session and parameters and everything like that associated with it. So I'm going to call this session here. I think this has been really useful. Hopefully you guys have got something good out of it. I'd highly recommend giving this a go. If you have an API key and you haven't tried browser HTML and actions, give it a go. And like I said, if you haven't, you can sign up. I think it's no credit card required for the sign up as well. So just get in there, get your $5 free credit, which will go quite a long way, and start playing around and seeing if it works for the sites that you want to do. So yeah, really appreciate you guys coming out, and thank you very much for watching. I'm going to call it here, and we'll chop this up and make this available as short videos on our channel, Extract Data here, so make sure you subscribe to this channel. We have the Extract Summit coming up, so make sure you're coming to that. There's one in Austin and one in Dublin, so no excuses, you can make those. There's lots of information on our website which you will need to go to. All that cool stuff. Come and talk in the Discord. I'll be in there. If you want to ask me anything about any of this or anything otherwise, just at me in there and I'll answer. So yeah, thank you very much everyone, and I will see you again definitely next Wednesday, if not before, for more stuff like this. Cheers, bye.